Hello dear friends, I would like to continue the exploration of a wonderful opening for the white pieces which is called the Catalan. And today we're going to be looking at one of the most popular ways how black can play against the Catalan opening. So we're going to play d4, d5, and now queen's gambit with the pawn to c4. Black is declining the gambit with e6. We're going to play knight to f3, knight to f6, and here g3, a signature move of the Catalan opening, which allows our bishop to join the long diagonal. If they were to take the pawn on c4, we would be calling this an open Catalan. It's a variation which I'm going to cover very soon in the next video. However, for today we're going to be covering, I believe, the so-called main line with bishop to e7, castles, and then takes the pawn on c4. So bishop to e7, bishop to g2, castles, castles, and now black takes the pawn on c4. There are two main moves here, one which is going to be our move for the video, queen to c2, the most popular move. However, I could briefly mention that knight e5 is a big alternative and a very standard idea in these Catalan waters. The basic idea is to open up the bishop on the long diagonal where we have a lot of dynamical potential, as well as attempt to win back the pawn very easily with knight takes c4. It was the main line until black started playing knight c6. It's not some kind of refutation of the line knight e5, but at the very top level perhaps it made many grandmasters to divert to the queen c2 variation instead of knight e5. Now, from the first glance, it seems like black is just blundering as the knight is being attacked 2 times and it's only protected once. But remember, for now, black is pawn up, and we could take here with the knight, we could take here with the bishop. Some interesting lines occur. We can watch them very briefly. For example, if bishop takes c6, we have a very forcing line where after we recapture on c6, we're double attacking the queen and the bishop of blacks. Queen to e8, knight takes, queen takes e7, and queen e4. So black's pawn structure is a bit damaged, and he has to know how to play from here. One of the ideas for black is to play e5, after which we have a gambit line for the black pieces this time. After takes on e5, and queen c4, black seems to be a pawn down. However, they have a compensation for it. First of all, they can play bishop e6 and develop a piece very actively with the tempo. Most games have seen queen d3 here. After rook d8, queen has to go to e3 square again. I think that for white, all he wants to do is exchange the queens. And queen h5, f3, bishop to c4 was the most popular position out of this line among the grandmasters. And I would say that black's activity compensates for the pawn. And going back, after knight to c6, there is also an alternative to take with the knight. So keeping that golden piece of ours, the bishop on g2, after which b takes c6 usually happens. Knight a3 is a very common way of trying to win the pawn back on c4. Bishop takes a3, they give up their bishop and the bishop pair to white. Takes on a3, bishop to a6, queen d2 with ideas of queen e5, and a very instructive position arises with a lot of subtleties. And if you want to study these positions, please do. It's an okay line to play with white. It's just that it requires theory, and perhaps it's also not everyone's cup of tea. So in this video, we're going to be covering more the line with queen to c2, which is the main line. Now black plays a6, and they're hoping to get very soon an ideas of either bishop d7, bishop c6, or b5 and bishop b7, depending on what white plays. So there is a branch here, 2 main lines, queen takes c4 and a4 are available. Both are perhaps equally objectively promising or attempt to get an advantage for the white pieces. We cannot say that one is better than the other, as all the main lines in chess lead to equality at the highest level. In this video, we're going to be covering the line with queen to c4. That's how I like to play. And black plays b5, and they're trying, and they will solve the problem of their light square bishop without too many headaches. So here we're going to go back to c2. It's a useful square. We're still aiming at c7, as well as the square e4 and this long diagonal. Our opponent plays bishop to b7, and the next move, if you have never seen it before, might look weird. Bishop to d2. So what's the big idea? Why this move? Well, in this position, black wants to play c5, which would fully equalize or attempt to do so. They would not have that weak backward pawn, as well as they would attempt to get all the space and central control back, which for now is in the white's hands. And this move, bishop to d2, we're really trying to get bishop to a5 and pin that pawn to make this break c5 a lot harder to get. The most popular move here for black is bishop to e4. We're hitting the queen with a tempo. They're placing the bishop on a very active centralized square. And here we have to play queen to c1, which is not the perfect square for our queen. And black has now a lot of moves to choose from. We're going to be covering the most popular move, which is going back. Perhaps it's invitation to the repetition of the moves and signing a draw. And we're also going to be looking at the most natural move, knight b to d7. So this move prepares c5, after which black gets a lot of benefits. They're trying to equalize in center, and space control seems to be very good for black. And we're going to place our bishop on a5, which kind of makes it annoying for black to be getting this c5. It's still too early to say that black is fully equal. And let's take a look at a very natural move, rook to c8. I think that the rook belongs on the c file to always support this c5 and overprotect if needed the weakness on c7. We're going to be playing here knight bd2, which hits the bishop. And in some cases, the knight could also go back to get to the square b3, where we're going to aim at the square on c5. Usually now, bishop goes back to a8, as it was attacked, and we don't want to exchange such a good bishop for the opponent's knight on d2. We're going to be playing a3, which kind of in some positions wants to play b4, which would have a huge grip on the square c5, and then black would never be able to achieve this move. And if queen e8, unpinning the pawn and ready to play c5, we're just playing b4. After which our bishop is a bit locked on the side of the board. However, practice has shown that it's alright, and we have our own play along the c file to play against the pawn on c7. So let's take a look how a couple of grandmaster games have been played from here. Bishop to d6, rook to e1, really inviting and want to play e4. So black plays knight e4 and prevents us from doing that. Now rook a2 was seen. f5 by black, rook to c2, and I start liking white's play along the c file. Knight to b6, queen to a1, bishop to d5, and rook ec1. Belevsky managed to win this with the white pieces, although objectively black's pieces are looking great in the center, very well centralized, and I'm sure that objectively it should perhaps be an equal position. Now let's go way back before black plays knight bd7 and explore for a little bit the main line with bishop to b7. The most popular move to play in this position for the white pieces is the move bishop to f4. We're targeting the pawn on c7 right now, and black has a couple of natural ways to deal with that. What is interesting is that after the move bishop to d6, we're willing to allow them to damage our pawn structure. It turns out that after e3, the pawns are going to be safe and solid, and at the same time, this pawn gets us a little bit more central control. Black usually plays knight bd7, and they're really trying very hardly to get this pawn move c5, which would allow them equalize or attempt to equalize in the central control. White is playing knight b3. This knight beautifully aims at the square on c5. And in case black plays something like a5, trying to expand there, we're even ready to play knight c5. So for instance, takes, and here white is just better. We're playing against the backward pawn on c7. Our rooks are gonna come. Maybe we can even triple up depending on what black is going to play. So most of the time they just play more natural moves like rook to c8. Rook to d1 is again very, very natural, as at any point if black plays c5 and we take, now our rook is even pinning the knight and attacking the queen indirectly on the d file. So it's natural for black to step out of the way. Queen e8 was played by black, and Belavsky played e3, bishop to d5, queen to c2. We're aiming just to double up on the c file and pressure c7, plus not allowing any kind of c5 ideas for black. Bishop e4, queen c3. Now maybe in the future queen could even terrorize black with queen a5. Bishop to d5 and rook ac1. I'm simply in love here with the white pieces. I think both practically and objectively white has a plus. And if you remember, after bishop f4, bishop d6 I mentioned is not the only way black would be playing. Let's shortly take a look at knight to d5. Here we're going to play knight c3 and challenge their knight in the center. We have hopes of taking on d5 and indirectly winning the pawn on c7 subsequently. So black can take our bishop on f4, and this time, because our knight from d2 is not blocking the queen, we're going to be taking back with the queen. And I feel like this position is easy to play for white. We have very simple development. Pieces are coming to the center, rooks are coming to d and c files. Black still has c7 to worry, and even though objectively black is fine, I feel like black needs to make some moves to claim that he has achieved equality. So these are just the fundamentals of this main line of the Catalan. The opening is really vast. There are many alternatives for both sides. I just want to give you some of the main ideas so that you would develop the feeling, and perhaps I will inspire you to explore this opening even deeper. There is at least one more line that I will want to cover, which is going to be the so-called open Catalan. It's when black takes on c4 very early in the game and perhaps even tries to hold on to the pawn with measures of a6 and b5. So hopefully that video is going to be soon on my chess channel. Please, if you enjoyed the video, do subscribe to my chess channel. You can also consider hiring me as your personal online chess coach. That's my full-time job. You can see my contacts on the bottom right. Stay healthy, my friends. Continue loving the game and play chess. See you in the next video.